All right, you guys have waited long enough. I'm gonna show you our new inventory system. I've been teasing this inventory system for a couple of weeks now, and I think it is about time to show you what is going on. If you want to see our old inventory system and what we converted from, I will link that down below in the description, but this is what we are currently doing. And honestly, it's not that huge of a change. A lot of people call this method the magazine method or the file system method. I don't know what I'm gonna call it. It's just now our inventory system. There was a lot of debate about changing to this inventory system in the beginning. I actually had mixed views in the office, and so we opted to essentially try this method out for about a month or so, and then if we didn't like it, we'd go back to our old system. Ultimately, we ended up converting completely over to the system. But what I wanted to say is, if you're somebody that is skeptical of any inventory system, before you convert over, maybe test out the new inventory system first and see if it will work for you before moving everything over. Okay, so what is this inventory system? Essentially, it is a file system, and we still have numbers on everything. So everything still has a SKU, but we are no longer replacing numbers. And that is the biggest difference. So when an item sells, we don't replace it. So every item has a SKU. In eBay, we put this number in the custom SKU, and that way we know where the item is. This number right here, if I were to go on eBay and find this, it would be assigned 7927. And everything is sequential. So whatever fits in this box, it is sequential numbers. So here's 7927, 7928, 7929, and so on. And so we have numbers all the way from 1 to actually almost 8,000 now, and those numbers are going to keep moving forward. So anytime we need to put away new inventory, we print new numbers. This is in contradiction to the last inventory system we had, where when something sold, we would record that number. Let's say item number 5002 sold in the middle of the inventory. Previously, we would write down and create a new 5002 label, slap it on the newly listed item, and then go back into the inventory system and put it back in its place. We no longer do that. Any new items just get a new number, and the numbers keep moving forward. So currently I am in the 8,000s, and we'll be filling up those numbers and continuing to move forward. I also just learned how to print these numbers very quickly in sequential order on my Rollo printer. And if you want to stay till the end of the video, I will show you how to do that. That has been an absolute game changer because I'm no longer having to write down numbers. And printing them takes far less time than writing them down. So let me take you around and kind of show you what we're looking at. So basically our row starts here for item number 1. Everything goes sequential down this way. Then it comes back up to the shelf and snakes back down all the way to the end. Once we get to the end, we double backed our shelves now, and then we turn around and we have the rest of the numbers, and we continue snaking through. So shelves are now also back to back in order to save space, which originally was kind of difficult because we had to learn to be in a snaking motion and know the direction that we were going. Boxes have also changed. We no longer use the banker boxes, although I have repurposed the banker boxes by cutting them in half so that we could use them with this new system. But anything moving forward will now be in these boxes. I will link the size of these below and also the link to them. I get them off of Uline, but they are very long, slinky boxes, and 4 fit on a shelf, and I'm still using the same shelf. Using these boxes is not as cost effective as the banker boxes, so wanted to be upfront about that. However, the amount of time we're saving by switching to this method definitely outweighs the cost. I'm now purchasing 4 boxes to 1 shelf, but I think it is completely worth it. So these boxes are, you can actually make them into a full box, but we just fold the tops down to make it more of an open box style. This size seems to fit perfectly with the, I think they're 10 by 9 maybe, Clear plastic bags also linked in the supplies list in the description of all my videos. If you go to the Linktree, the supplies list is there and a link to all of our supplies are there. So these clear plastic bags are in there too, and they just fit perfectly in these boxes. So basically everything gets stood up. And now when we are listing items, we literally take an empty box over back to the photographing station. And so since we're always listing our new items with new fresh numbers, there's no need for them to scramble them and have to go find them and put them away. They just put them in one of these boxes, and then when they are done, they pop it back onto the shelf. Finding items has been a lot easier too, because I can now just go and pull an item. It's always in order. Nothing is scrambled into a box. Before, I was having to dump entire totes or boxes out to find the items that I needed. And although I thought I was efficient, it was not the most efficient method. So now if I need to find one, I can pull that box out, fan through, and everything is in order, and it makes it super easy, and I don't have to dump any boxes out. So you'll notice that the boxes are no longer labeled. We're strictly going off of the label on the bag. So we know that anything, because they're sequential, anything in this box is between 7819 and 7824. Hopefully that makes sense. So you have to rely on the label that's in the next box to know what your range is. That was definitely an adjustment in the beginning because we were used to having the numbers on the outside of the boxes. But after about a week's time, this process became super simple and it became the norm. The girls that I have shipping the items right now are super happy about this new inventory system, not only for pulling items, but also when they go to list stuff, they no longer have to put it away. So I know what you're thinking. What is the downside to this system, right? There is one slight downside. It requires quite a bit of maintenance. So since we are no longer replacing inventory SKUs, when something sells, it causes the box to become emptier and emptier. And so you've got all these little holes throughout your inventory system, whereas before you used to replace them so your inventory system was always full. So in order to combat the empty holes, you have to constantly do what's called a condensing system. Depending on how much you sell and how much you have, your condensing system would need to be done once a week, twice a week. It really depends, maybe even once a month. I think for us, the system's still kind of new and we've only done condensing a couple of times, but I think that condensing is going to have to be done once a week. And so the idea is that when something sells, you leave it empty, and then when it comes time to condense, you have to move everything forward. So basically your whole system moves and closes in those gaps each time that you condense. Now we've got just over 6,000 items right now, some of which are, by the way, we still have like our bulk system and our hanging racks and stuff, but anything that can fit in these boxes does. And so I would say there's probably approximately 5,500 items in these boxes at any given time. So moving 5,500 items constantly would be pretty time consuming. I timed it out and had one of the girls do some condensing, and she was able to condense 2 rows in 1 hour. That is without any training and have never done it before. So she's obviously going to get faster with time, but I thought an hour for 2 rows was pretty good. We currently have a little less than 8 rows, so it'll take her, if she did the entire thing, which she's more than likely not going to do, it would take a total of 4 hours each time that we condense in order to do the total amount. Currently, it seems like we're having to do this about every other week, but I suspect hopefully as sales grow as we move into Q4 that we might actually have to do this once a week. So you might be asking yourself, is 4 hours of work really worth converting to the system? I personally still think yes. The amount of time that we are saving when we go to ship is tremendous. And not only to ship, but as we are listing, we're not having to go back and put items away. So I absolutely already see a pro as far as saving time. But I'm not gonna lie, the condensing part is my least favorite part. We're also kind of in transition right now, deciding how much we want to condense, how often, and the way that we're gonna do it, which is why you're seeing a couple of empty rows right now. There are some empty rows because we are halfway through condensing right now. But the beauty of this inventory system is that it's kind of fluid. So if you just wanna condense one row one day, you can do that. Pulling items and putting away items has never been easier though, and so I personally think that the pros far outweigh the cons. So far, this is the best inventory system that I have tried. It took us, with, like I said, approximately 5,500 listings in the boxes. It took us approximately 10, maybe 12 hours with 4 people here to get it done. So it did take a lot of time up front, like a whole shift basically, for us all to get everything converted over. And I would recommend, if you plan on converting, to do it all in one day. It just makes things so much easier. Hope you guys like learning about this new inventory system, and we will keep you updated as we decide how many times a week we need to condense, and update you on the pros versus the cons. But I can say that I think we are going to stick with this inventory system for quite some time because we are just in love with it, minus the condensing. Let me know if you switched to this inventory system down below, and if you liked it, if you stuck with it. Or if you've been considering this inventory system, you can drop that down below as well. Tell me what your hangups are. But I am going to slide on over to a different kind of tutorial, because as I promised at the end of this video, I'm going to show you how we print these labels on our Rollo printer. And I'm sorry, I'm only showing the way that we do it on the Rollo printer. If you have a different kind of printer, a different size sticker or inventory label, that is something you are going to have to figure out on your own. I unfortunately cannot be your technical support, but the process is pretty similar, and I was able to figure it out by quick Google searches and watching other YouTube tutorials using the printer that I have. And so I bet you could do the same with your printer. But this is how I do it on the Rollo printer. All right, so right now we have our 4x6 shipping labels set up. So I am just going to change that real quick. And we have our 2x1 labels, which is what we use for the SKUs down here. I'm just gonna feed that through, and then all you do is clip it together as close together as you can. And I'm going to move this over a little bit so it's feeding a little bit better. This is what it looks like. You just make sure that these are pinched in. Close it and then allow it to recognize the new size. If it's still red, you just click that once and it should feed it through. Once it's green, you know you're ready to go. All right, and so you're gonna wanna make sure that you have your Rollo set up. I just followed on Rollo.com. You can type a Rollo printer setup. It'll take you to this page, and you can just follow along step 1 all the way through 4. It's super simple to figure out. You really only need step 1 and 2. So I've got the printer set up here, so that is good to go. And I'm gonna go to my control panel, and I'm gonna find printers and scanners, click. And now I need to find my Rollo printer, which is here. And I'm gonna get to printing preferences. And we need to go to settings. And here is where you can add a custom paper size, which is what you'll need to do in order to use anything that isn't the default. And usually the default is the 4x6. Usually they already have that set up for you when you print the driver, but this one is not. So I'm using 2x1 labels, which I will have linked down below in the description box in case you're interested in purchasing those exact ones, because it's a pretty good deal and it'll work exactly if you follow along in this video. So one thing to note is when you are on your settings and you want to create your custom paper, you have to know that these are in millimeters, as you see here, and all we have are inches. So we know they're 2x1 inches. So we need to convert. So I just go millimeters to inches. You can use the Google conversion. So I typed 2 here. This is 50.8. I'm gonna round up to 51. And then one is 25.4. We're closer to rounding down, so we're going to round down to 25. So I wrote it down. It is 51 millimeters width by 25 millimeters height. And that's probably the hardest part. So now that we've done that, we are going to go back to our printer settings and create this custom amount. So I'm going to change this to, say, SKU labels, and you will see this when you go to print too. So you want to make sure it's something you're going to remember. I'm going to type SKU labels 2x1, and then my width is going to be 51 and my height is going to be 25. So 51, 25. And then you're going to save, and you want to make sure that that pops up here. So you can see this is now a new custom paper, and you're going to hit OK. So now that we've created the custom paper, we should be able to print with that setting if we want to. So I'm going to close out of these. I followed another YouTuber's video. I think they were also a reseller on how they printed using these exact same labels. If I can find that same video, I'll link it down below just to give credit where credit is due. But he does use a Mac computer, and so when I used Windows, it was a lot harder to translate the instructions. But I'll include that down below in case you do have a Mac computer and you want to follow along with his. So what you can do is go to avery.com, which is free, create an account, and then you go to your projects. And I already have mine saved, but you can also, when you sign up, you're not going to have one. So you can go to create a new project, and we're going to be using template 4130, which you can see is saved right here. So you'll go to create a new project. You'll type in 4130 to search, and you'll see the 1 inch by 2 inch direct thermal labels. So we're going to select this design. And from here, we are going to go to more and sequential numbers. And you've got your start value, your end value, and then some other settings here. So we've already printed labels through 10,500. So I'm just going to do a quick little test run here. We'll do 501 through, let's just say, 10, 5, 10, just so I'm not printing that many. And so it should be printing through that range. I think you can print up to 3,000. Is that what I told you before, Molly? You can print up to 3,000 at a time. So if you do any more than that, it won't work. So you're going to want to make sure to break it up into increments of 3,000. But the less times I have to do this, the better. So once you've set up your range that you want, you will then hit add sequential numbers down here, and you'll see that it populates it for you. From here, you want to kind of snap this area into the borders so that you're able to change the font as big as you want it. 40 seems to be good for us. We can make it slightly bigger. It looks like that's too much. Say 44 is good. And so I'm making sure that right here I've hit edit all so that it's editing all of them, but that should be your default. And then I just scroll through a couple of them to make sure it all applied. You can also change the font if you want, but I just tend to leave it at the default. And then from there you can hit preview and print, get PDF to print, and then if you want to, you can save your design. I recommend doing that just so if you go to your projects, you'll always have a template number down at the bottom. But I don't really need to save mine right now, so I'm gonna hit don't save. Open your PDF, and then you should be ready to print right here. We're gonna hit print. And so you can see that my default paper size right now is the 4x6, which is 100 millimeters by 150 millimeters. If I was to print on that, it would look somewhat like this on the 4x6 labels. So that's why we needed to create the custom size, which is now down here, and I'm going to click on that. And this is how it's going to look on my label now. So I am going to print these and we can see how they look on these labels. So these look pretty good. You can make slight adjustments if you need to the direction, if you wanted them more in the center, orientate the page a little better, but in general this works pretty well and looks great for our new SKU system, and we're no longer having to type everything out either. This is also something you could do even if you didn't want sequential numbers. You could just create that project, and then if you wanted to replace numbers, you could just come to your Avery project every single day, type in the SKUs that you wanted to replace, print those out, and you'd be ready to go. All right, guys, so that is how to print your labels onto the Rollo printer using the supplies that we are currently using and the methods that we're using, which I think are super easy and simple. That is also our brand new inventory system. I hope that you guys enjoyed learning about it, and hopefully you'll consider doing this inventory system for yourself in some way or some form, because it did make a huge, tremendous impact on the amount of time we were spending on shipping and on listing. And I hope it could do the same for you. That is it, you guys. I will see you in the next video. Bye.